I just don't need that negativity in my life. Have you ever said that or seen someone else say it? Maybe you've thought of it, saying, if I could just get that person out of my life, it's toxic when they're around. Yeah, let's talk about it. I've mentioned several times on my coffee talks that one of these days I would talk about toxic people. Well, that day has finally come. So I'm drinking a bit of coffee. It's actually this morning I was home for breakfast, so I made a French press at breakfast time, and this French press keeps it nice and warm until now for my second cup of coffee for the day. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this, and the reason for it is I keep seeing things like this, and this was one that I wrote down, that I kept noticing different people saying it in different ways. But it's like, I stopped texting people first just to see who would actually reach out to me, is the idea. So I stopped texting people first and realized a lot of people weren't ever reaching out to me, and so I was just watering a dead plant. That was the quote I had seen. I was watering a dead plant. And I've thought about that a lot. The whole idea of toxic people, we in our culture, we talk about margin, we talk about boundaries, we talk about space, we talk about us being responsible for me, and that I can't change you, but I can change me, and so therefore sometimes I just have to get rid of you in order for me to maximize my full potential. And so that's actually, it's something really to think about. Hey Sasha, thanks for joining in, and I see someone's here from Uganda. Awesome. So I'm talking about this toxic people thing from a perspective of, on the one hand side, there have been times in my life where I have distanced myself from people, where I didn't text first, so to speak. But there are other times when I continue to reach out and to text first, even when it doesn't seem that it's being responded to. And as you know, it's one thing to talk about, if I am the supreme commander of my own life, then what I want and what I like and what I prefer is the law of the land. But if my life actually does not belong to me, but belongs to someone else, then he is the supreme commander of what happens in my life. And so in my case, I've submitted my life and surrendered myself to Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the creator of the universe. And so I am here. Hey, Susanna, thanks for joining. So I'm here not just to talk about what I like and what I feel about, but to actually talk about what do we do with the negativity. Wow, we got Kenya, Uganda, looks like Montana, and I'm not sure, Suzanne, is that Pennsylvania, or where are you? I'm not positive. So anyway, thank you guys for joining in. Last year, I was preaching through a series of messages, and I came to a point where we were discussing the priests, the Levitical priests, when they were building the tabernacle, and there was this point where here are the priests of God, and they're bringing the sacrifice of God, and they're coming into the Holy of Holies, into that in the area where they're bringing the sacrifice to God. And oh yes, it is Pennsylvania. I was correct. And so as they were coming in, the Old Testament law was telling them what they should wear, how they should trim their, like everything about them was being talked about, but they were supposed to be barefoot. And so I named the message. It's still over probably on the Living Water Fellowship live stream somewhere, called Barefoot on a Dirt Floor. And it had to do with the fact that, there's Iowa. We have everyone checking in. Awesome. Thank you. And so we had, if you think about being barefoot on a dirt floor, but you're serving the Most High God, it's an unusual thought to think that I'm coming to the Holy of Holies. Now, we know with Moses, when he comes to the burning bush, that God says, you're in holy ground, take off your shoes. Okay, we can see that. But the priests of the Lord coming into the presence of the Lord. And he says, I want you to be barefoot on the dirt floor while you minister to me. That concept just really stuck with me. And here's the reason why. We have, I see now we got Indiana, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Kenya, Uganda, and Montana. That's awesome. And I'm in Colorado, so welcome. So I have here, this is what I actually took with me to church when I was preaching. So see this little light just shining away? If we are believers and we belong to Jesus Christ, we say, from Matthew 5, don't hide your light under a bushel, the Sermon on the Mount. And so as you're talking about Jesus saying, we are the light of the world, the city that is set on a hill cannot be hid, we know that there is something that when we belong to Jesus Christ, we have the light of God within us. And so what I did was I took this board with me and I said I had a science experiment. And so I was talking about it from this angle right here. Okay, so electricity works this way. We have somewhere the power flowing in. So think in the example of the tabernacle, the priests are there. The power of God, the presence of God is there. But they are barefoot on a dirt floor. They're very connected to the earth. And so in electricity, we have the positive and we have the neutral. And it's not that these two are both sending something to the light. It's that it creates a loop. And when this current comes through here, the light comes on. And so in my sermon, I got somebody to come up and say, okay, so I said, explain to me how electricity works. And they explained electricity a little bit. And I said, okay, now look at this. Look at what I'm about to do. I've gotten, I love the power. I love the power of God in my life. I love it. Good things coming my way. I just absolutely love it. But I'm sick and tired of negativity. I'm sick and tired of people coming and just zapping stuff out of me. It's just this toxicity is too much for me. So I went to the hardware store and got myself a negativity filter, and I put it right here. Okay? So what happens? See, I can turn this on right here. I'm going to flip on my negativity filter, and I'm going to have no more negativity. Ta-da! No more negativity. Now, the power is still flowing in all the way here. I've still got all the power of God. But what's going on here? When I filter out the negativity, the brokenness of this world, and I take it all the way out, my light also goes away. And I took my light and I hid it under a bushel, and I just, and I'm still open to receive from God what He has. But I'm not willing to be barefoot on the dirt floor. I'm not willing to be connected to the negativity or the brokenness of the world. So this is not a perfect illustration, but it is one to make me think. So I love using this as my illustration of, okay, a negativity filter doesn't actually work quite the way I want it to work. Because when I take away the negativity that's in the brokenness of the world all around me and in other people, then suddenly the power of God that is flowing to me, it needs to be connected to the brokenness of the world. Now, in reality, there's enough brokenness in me that when the power of God encounters me here, the light can shine right here. But God designed us not to be in isolation, but to actually be in community and in dealing with other people. And so we have to have some connection for the power of God to come and reach out and touch other people. And that's part of when I think about toxic people, what I think about is sometimes we only say, oh, wow, now Germany's up there too as well. So awesome. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us from YouTube there. So we have... The illustration, like I said, it's not exactly perfect because if you think about it, there are things in life that we separate from because they're truly painful or hurtful. And just simple, think of a fire. We keep a margin and a boundary between us and fire because it's not safe. Fire can burn us, fire can hurt us, fire can destroy us. And so there are things that can hurt us, burn us, destroy us, and we have to keep some margin there. And I think I was trying to find the other book, but I read this book by Dr. Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings. He also had another book just called Boundaries that he wrote with another gentleman. And he actually is a counselor and helps people sort through psychological things. I am not, right? I am a pastor. I'm a friend. I'm a family member, brother, sister, husband now, father. And so there's a certain amount of psychology and such that I have to study just because life is happening. But this is not my entire study of life. So these are my observations, not to be taken as exact as counsel if you're really struggling in a relationship. There are others that can help you more, but this might be helpful, what I'm sharing. What I did find was when I read Necessary Endings, it helped me think through things in a more clear way to understand what's happening. Same with Boundaries. Boundaries was a hard book for me to read through. I read pieces of it the first time I opened it, and then I went back later and checked out some other chapters and things. But it's good concepts to think about. Is in the same way that we don't take a man, if a man takes fire into his bosom, won't he be burned, or whatever that proverb was. And so that is a danger that we could get burned. And so the question is, when I have someone in my life, and I remember one way of talking about it was, are they an energy giver or are they an energy taker? And the idea was, in the talk that I heard, was that we want to be energy givers, not energy takers. The talk didn't deal with what if everyone around us is an energy taker. Now, for moms who have a lot of children, and they get up some mornings and they all come out to the kitchen, to the table, and they are literally all energy takers. And so at that point, mom could say, you know what? I'm sick of this negativity is too much. And she just flips the switch and says, I'm going to get all these people out of my life. And we all look at her and say, what's wrong with you? You're the mom. Take care of your kids. She says, I'm done with the negativity. I'm finished. I don't like it. Okay, that wasn't the question. You're the mom, so you have to somehow find a way for you to actually be able to respond to these children in a way that lets the light of God shine into their life. And so just getting rid of the person is not always the best answer. It is an easy answer. But here's something I've thought about quite a bit, and this might help you. When we talk about electricity, there's currents that flow. Most of our relationships, when I say energy giver, energy taker, those are relationships that are at stake. And so there's a whole bunch of connections. If I think of all the people in my life, there are a lot of connections being made. So potentially, I'm a pastor. So let's take a church setting, for example. So maybe I only see you in the hallway or the foyer at church, and and I see you every Sunday, and we smile. We don't actually say hi. We don't say anything else. We just smile back and forth. Okay, at that level, none of us has truly taken the energy from the other person. In fact, we've given a little bit of energy. It's a very small relationship. We might talk once a year more than just a smile or a hi in the hallway, right? But it still is a connection. And so if you put me in a fellowship full of people and I have a whole bunch of connections, I don't know to what level am I, when I smile and say hi, I don't know how much am I encouraging them when they smile and I receive that, how much, but there's a flow. There's something happening relationally. And when you start taking out all of those people, so let's say suddenly, one by one, different people are gone. And so I'm walking down the hallway at church going, I used to always come every Sunday morning and I'd walk down here and I'd meet so-and-so and we would smile, and I haven't seen her in such a long time. What? I wonder what happened to her. And so then you multiply that multiple times over, and what's happening is you're slowly losing connections with other people that didn't seem big, but they were valuable. And if you take enough of these connections out, then at some point you start feeling lonely. You're like, I'm just not seeing as many people as I need to see. Now, for a person who is, an introvert or an extrovert, you might have different levels of like, oh, I need to see all the people all the time. Or I'm like, I need to see one person once a month, and that would be sufficient. But at some level, we actually interact with other people and we get inner energy from them. And the term, by the way, where I find myself the most is not introvert or extrovert, but ambivert, where there are seasons in my life where I just need a little bit less and seasons where I need a little bit more. And so you can call me either one, and I can somewhat identify with the feelings of extroversion and introversion. just because of the basics of what's happening in life. So ambivert is the term I prefer, which basically just means both. So back to the idea of connections and the flow of energy. It is possible that when I meet you at work or at the store where you work, and I ask you a question and you go, "Oh, not him again." Every time he comes in, I don't like it. It's always just a little bit hard. And so you get to feeling, and so let's imagine you're working in a grocery store, and there's all of these other clerks checking out. Now, this is the days before self-checkout, right? So there's actual people. There's you and the person who's bagging the groceries, and then here's the next clerk and the person that's bagging the groceries. And so there could be, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are working together up here, and you look over and you see the grumpy guy walking in the doorway, and you all look at each other and you're like, the grumpy guy's here. Wonder who's going to have to check him out this time. And so you just kind of wait, and you see him every so often back there in the aisles, and eventually the grumpy guy comes up, and everyone's kind of waiting to see who's he going to get. Well, it's become such a thing that now the grumpy guy finally comes in, and is being, and maybe he chooses you, and so you know that everyone else up and down this, everyone that you're working with, they want to hear what you're going to say, what the grumpy guy is going to say. And so you go ahead and you try to greet the grumpy guy cheerfully. "Hey, grumpy guy, how's your day?" And he says, "Whatever, And so you try something else cheerfully, and you know that what you're doing right now is not just because you're trying to be kind to the grumpy guy, which, company policy, you should be kind, so you're trying. But that's not really what you're doing here. You're doing this interaction because as soon as the grumpy guy walks out the doorway, all of these people are going to look at you, and there's going to be a laugh together because of the things you said, the things he said, whatever. An exchange is for the mutual benefit of all of you. And so you could say that after a while, you look forward to the visits of the grumpy guy, and you hope he comes to your table because when you, or your checkout, because when you interact with the grumpy guy, it actually gives you more interaction with everyone else, and you value these connections. So this is a long story to illustrate a simple point. There are times when negative people come into our lives, but the sum total of what we get in return is actually more than what they take away. Now, we're not always receiving it from them, but by interacting with them, we get more of something that we actually do like. And so this happens in a lot of different areas where we actually interact with people. Now, there are other people that are not grumpy or mean, but they're just not... We don't know if they give us energy. And I remember a relationship in my 20s where the gentleman would come in, and if I made a statement, he wouldn't just take the statement for what it was worth. He would ask a question, which would make me have to verify my information, and I have to think about, well, is what I said really true? And after a while, I'd be like, oh no, here he is again. I'm going to have to be very careful what I say when he's around, because he's not going to just let anything slide. I'm going to have to verify that what I said actually is true, and I'm going to have to think about it. So the sum total of that relationship, at first, it was like this. I brought this as an illustration too, okay? So here's a knife, and here is this, what we just call the sharpener. So look at this. If I'm doing this to the knife, and if you watch very closely, there's actually little bitty metal flakes. I might get censored because I'm waving knives around in a coffee talk online. That's an interesting thought. So if you're sharpening a knife, you do this, and a little tiny flecks of metal are actually being sometimes removed, sometimes being realigned on a blade. If you ask the blade, is this taking something from you? The blade says yes. That thing takes stuff away from me, and it opposes me, and I just don't like it. But once the interaction is finished, then you ask the knife, well, are you able to, are you sharper now? Are you able to cut better and focus and do what you're called to do? Is that better? And the knife says, yes, actually, after my interaction with that person, I'm actually a better person. I'm sharper, and I'm able to do my job better. Okay, so it felt negative. It felt toxic even. It felt like this was opposing the knife to such a level that something was being removed from the knife, and yet at the end it sharpened the knife and helped the knife do its job better. So that's one illustration of what when people come into our life, and it's not about me necessarily, but I'm saying, Lord, you called me here, you brought these people into my life. I don't like this person. In fact, I want to just call them toxic and create a wall and say, get out. And yet God says, I want you to let them interact with you. And I want you to have this interaction. And then after you're finished with that interaction, what does it cause you to do? And many times I say, well, my interaction with such and such was not pleasant. Did not enjoy it. Felt very negative and toxic. But it caused me to pray and seek your face, Lord, and ask you what I'm supposed to be doing, and even ask you if you have something you want me to say to this person. So at the end of the day, I'm a better, more focused child of yours because of this person that's in my life. And so that's one way of dealing with toxic people, is to allow them to push me closer to Jesus and allow me to be sharpened in my message of how I interact with them. In Proverbs, there's one proverb that says, don't answer a fool according to his folly. And then a little later, there's another proverb that says, answer a fool according to his folly. And I've read through those several times going, okay, what is this? Why? And it's because if I make a rule about interacting with people and say, well, there's a fool, and I'm not going to interact with him in that way, God might come along and say, actually, I want you to go interact with that person. And one of the reasons for interacting with a fool and answering him according to his folly is because there's someone standing by listening. And almost 100% of the time, a relationship that you have with someone else affects more than just you two. Almost 100% of the time, the interactions you're having with someone else goes beyond what you and that person are talking about, and it affects bystanders and other people in the nearby relationships. And so when you say purely that, I don't need that negativity in my life, I'm tired of this toxicness, I'm going to cut them off, I'm not going to send a text first, I'm just going to wait, I'm going to let them drift away. When you say those things, what you're saying is, it's me that's most important. And you stop realizing that, actually, I don't belong to myself, I belong to Jesus, and he might want to reach this person that's right next to the toxic person. And so we keep relationships, and this is something I learned for myself, is no matter how negative or toxic a relationship feels, I miss them when they're gone. And to some level, when someone leaves from our life, so imagine, going back to church. So there's a family there, they have, 8 kids. So you have the husband, the wife, and the 8 kids. That's 10 people. That's 10 connections you have with someone. And then God calls them and they move across the land to some other place. And they're gone from so every Sunday when you get together, when you normally would see them, on Wednesday nights when you'd normally see them, they're not there. Well, you're not just missing one person. You're missing 10 people. Now, some of those interactions with that family of 10, you might have had one person in that family that you were very close with, that you prayed together, you shared heart things together. And there might be someone in that family that you kind of was annoying and you didn't really like that much. And then some of them were just a smile in the hallway. But there were 10 relationships, 10 connections, 10 times that the current of the living God flowing into you was connecting with humanity. 10 times, potentially, that the current of the living God flowing into them was connecting to you and doing something for you. And now they're all gone, all at once. And when they're gone and you miss them, you grieve a little. So if you imagine this happening over and over and over again, whenever there's a relationship of any kind and then that relationship is gone, we grieve a little. On film sets, when I've worked on them, many times, and this has happened on mission trips as well, and some other summer camps that I've worked with, you get a bunch of people together, we're all together for a certain amount of time, and somewhere in there we just really click and gel and we come so close. And then at the end of the time, we have to leave and all go our separate ways, and we feel sad because that was such a close, good relationship, and so we grieve it. So if you think about someone who's in the gig working field, like in filmmaking or something, here we come, we work together, and then we separate. And so then we have to go get another job, make all new relationships, and then we separate. And after a while, workers that are doing this are saying, it'd be easier if I just worked with the same people over and over again, because it's just really hard on me to always go through this. There's a lot of emotional taxing. On a larger level, a deeper level, people who work, say, the ER or in certain wards of our hospitals, people who, what happens over and over again is they and their team are working together, and here comes a patient. They're trying to take care of their patient. Their patient seems to be getting better, and then suddenly their patient dies, and they go through that loss. And so that's one thing to handle. They have to process that. Well, next thing you know, another patient comes in, and after a while, it's just time after time, they almost hate seeing a patient coming in through the door, because at first they were like, I'm going to help this person. And now they know there's whatever the percentage is, that a certain percentage of people who are coming through that door, I'm not going to say goodbye to them and send them home to their family. They're going to die right here. And so the disconnect from even that brief of a relationship, but it's a deep one because I'm trying to save your life, can be catastrophic for the psychology and the emotional life of a person. And so we can see it on that level. We can see it, but what we don't always realize is that all of the relationships that are in our life right now have some opportunity either for us to receive something from God through them, or to give something from God through us to them. And those are necessary and important connections. And so there are times for myself, Denver area here is a very transient place, even, in the church as well. And so, in the last couple of years, we've moved 8 or 9, I forget now, families from our fellowship out of state. And so every time we do that, there's those missed connections where I'm going, oh man, I love those guys, and now they're gone. And I believe they're following the Lord. I'm excited for them. I pray with them. I've helped some of them move out of state. I'm glad that they're able to hear from God. I'm glad for what God is doing with them in the places they live now, but I still miss them. And so that's the reality of this, is that we actually need each other. So back to my negativity filter, we need to be very, very careful that we're not cutting out the work that God has for us when we make these cuts with people. We need to be very careful that we're not avoiding an actual sharpening process that would make us more focused and a better person that God has called us to be. We need to understand that everybody in the world is broken on some level, and maybe, just maybe, the power of God flowing through me might be able to address the brokenness in someone else. And if they could be healed from what has broken them, they would cease being a toxic person. And then suddenly not only us, but everyone else around them would have a better relationship, and it would be so encouraging to see a toxic person go from being toxic to being functioning and a source of the power of God. So that's my goal whenever I meet people. There are still people, and so here's a simple trick too. If in your relationship you have someone who's just negative and all about themselves, and you finally are just like, I can't handle this anymore, one simple way of doing it is that in your relationship, you just start always insisting that you're going to talk about Jesus, and you're going to pray for them, and you just start doing that. And if they absolutely hate that and do not want to align with Jesus at all, they will remove themselves from the relationship in a way that you don't feel bad about. You didn't cut them off. You insisted on smiling and praying and encouraging them with the words of Jesus. And they're just sick of it at some point. They say, I don't want it anymore. Well, now you're in a better place because their toxicity has left the building, but you didn't cut them off. You just overwhelmed them with the power, with the love of God, right? So that's one thought, is that make sure that your focus is so Christ-like that if there's someone that doesn't want to be Christ-like, they will remove themselves from fellowship with you. That way you don't have to do it, but the distance is there, and it's still open. Anytime they want to come back, they know the conditions. If I go back there, I'm going to have to talk about Jesus. If they're okay with that, awesome. If they're not okay with that, well, we'll pray for them and see what happens later. So I don't know if any of this is truly helpful for you, but these are the things that I do when I meet people. These are the things I think about and measure. There is some value in having toxic relationships. There's a lot of selfishness in thinking that I can remove all negativity and all brokenness out of my life because I myself am broken and I am toxic to somebody. Somebody somewhere is annoyed by me when I'm around. And I hate to think about that, but it's the reality of the way life works. And so these things are helpful for me to not just cut people off and think, oh, well, now I'm better because I cut everyone off. No, God is trying to do something. He might remove you from some scenarios. You might actually have to set up boundaries and say, I'm sorry, I cannot do this with you. You might have to, and that might remove some toxic people from your life. But in the end, the whole point is that there is the power of God flowing into us that needs to connect with the brokenness of the world to shine the brightest. So let's do that. Let's not allow someone else's toxicity to keep us from doing what God has called us to do. All right, that's my coffee talk for this morning. Thank you guys for joining in from all around the world. Blessings, and I will see you next time.